Hello and welcome to Battle Ready. You know, I had a friend of mine, I was talking to Warhammer with him because he's very interested in the game, or at least marginally interested. And he said, you know, the game sounds pretty fun. He even likes the idea of painting a little bit. But he mentioned to me, you know, the building just seems so difficult and challenging and not fun. And not just that it wasn't fun, but that he was a little intimidated to do it and, you know, maybe glue something on wrong. And, you know, frankly, when I was younger, my parents bought me some modeling stuff and it did not go well. And so I can appreciate the reluctance. But I thought, you know, we'd just build something relatively simple. And that's why I've got my Doomfire Warlocks here. I say relatively simple because they're not push fit, they're not easy to build, but they're not the most complicated thing in the whole world. And to build your model, you only need a couple of tools. You need a cutting surface. I've got this cutting mat that's, you know, self-healing and all that. Works pretty good. You need clippers, and you want to make sure you have clippers that have a flat back on the end. One side's usually rounded, but flat back. I just got these off of Amazon. They're great. They've served me for all my different clipping. Stay pretty sharp, like them. You're gonna need some glue. You can use super glue, or some people call it CA glue. It stands for acrylite, something. Anyway, super glue. I prefer to use plastic glue, or sometimes called plastic cement. This is Tester's brand. The difference between the two is super glue is super sticky. And so it bonds the two things together, and they are stuck together really, really well. The downside is they're still two separate pieces. They're just two pieces with some sticky stuff between them. So if you drop it or something like that, they could bounce into the two separate parts. But if you want to pull the pieces apart later, if for whatever reason you decide, oh, I messed something up, you can get them apart. You might need to put them in the freezer to get it real brittle and then sort of gently wiggle, but you can get them apart if you need to. Plastic glue, on the other hand, actually melts the plastic. And so it melts both sides, and then when the glue stops activating, the two sides are melded. It's like a weld. They're burned together. So on the one hand, that's great because those things are essentially one piece of plastic now. They're not gonna come apart. On the other hand, if you put something in the wrong place and you want to pull it off later, you're pretty sunk. The one nice thing about the plastic glue is it has a little bit of a longer set time. So if you put two pieces together, they'll stick together pretty good after just a few seconds, but they won't completely harden and fuse for about a half hour. So if you're doing one sort of building session, and you come back to something and you think, oh shoot, I meant to put that, you know, that arm isn't quite in the right spot, or that leg didn't get the gap just right. You can fix it usually. You can sort of worry them apart, and then when you get them apart, re-glue them, as long as you're within that sort of half-hour window. But the later you go, the more welded those are gonna be, and if you don't notice until the next day, that's just how that is now. Okay, so Doomfire Warlocks. Oh, last thing, as I've got a X-Acto knife here. This is an Army Painter brand. I bought it from the Army Painter because I needed a little bit more to get to the shipping number, I think. And it's great, sharp blades. It's you know, changeable and everything. You don't need to get a branded one. You can get one from Amazon, change the blades. It's gonna do you just fine. The branded ones tend to be a little bit more expensive. And frankly, I wouldn't do this again. Okay, so now that we have everything, let's open these up and see what we've got. So inside your box here, you're gonna get several guides and the instruction manual and bases. Okay. So put the bases to the side for now. We will use them in a second. I'm just gonna build one guy so that you can see it on camera, but they all build pretty much the same. Now these things with all the little pieces on them, those are called sprues. So if you hear people talk about, oh, you gotta get them from the sprue or whatever, they're talking about these things. And then you get one instruction manual. Now importantly, this kit can be built as Doomfire Warlocks, and that's what I'll be building. They go with the Daughters of Cain. But the same kit can be built slightly differently to give you Dark Riders, which are in the Cities of Sigmar army. I don't know that much about Dark Riders, but a lot of kits you'll see you can build in different ways. So if you build it one way, you get sort of the named character, the Gobsprak, or the the guy with the name, and then you can, or the Lucavi, right? And then the girl with the name. And then you can build it alternatively as sort of a random, Corpse Ripper Vulture guy, or a random Avangori monster. And so you'll see that a lot. So one of the things to do is when you have a kit, if it can be built in multiple ways, just before you start cutting and gluing and doing some things, just give a quick look over the steps, the big steps you'll be taking. Okay, so now that we have our steps, let's look at our Doomfire Warlocks. And we're gonna have to pause real quick because I forgot the other thing. Okay, so sorry about that quick break, but needed a paper towel. With the glue, can get a little messy, so I wanna make sure I have something to catch that. All right, so heading over to the Doomfire Warlocks, we're gonna do this one. Master of Warlocks, he's sort of the general, the sergeant, the champion, I guess. And so it's pretty easy. Anytime you see one of these things, you're just gonna look for the numbers. So it shows 5 and 6, and in between them, 18C, and we put all those together. So we're gonna look over here for 5 and 6. Now each of these things is numbered, so every little piece has a number on the sprue next to it, so you'll be able to determine where the different pieces are. So for example, here's 7 and 8. So here and here, this is 5 and 6. So I'll go ahead and open them. So when you clip them, you wanna make sure to clip the flat part against the model so that you clip off as many of the sprue things as possible. And then this one's listed as 18C. Sometimes the sprues will have letters next to them, which is great because then you can sort of see if you're in the right realm when you're looking between the different sprues. They don't all do that though. Okay, so now I've got the first 3 pieces from the box. Try to hold this up so you can see it. So this box here is the first one. So we've got 5, 6, and 18 going in the middle there. So what I like to do before I glue anything in is I'll take a piece, and you can see the half a horse here, right? And then I take the piece that's supposed to go in there, sort of match it up to what it looks like on the paper, and then slot it in. And once it slots in, typically they slot in pretty nicely. So now that I've sort of dry fit it, I'm gonna open up my glue, pour a little glue at the places where the joins are. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, but enough. And then I just put it right back where it was. Now, this piece, this other half horse, is just gonna go shoop right in there and connect together. So I'm gonna put glue all around the edge where the 2 pieces will come together. And I'm also just gonna put a little dot on the horse face because that's where the bridle on this piece is going to connect. And then you line them up and squish them together. Boop. I like to give them just a squeeze for about 5 seconds, and then we're good to go. So this thing is ready. Now the next step is we're going to put the reins on the other half of the horse. So we're going to do this one over here. So the reins are this one, and then we're going to put the guy's body. Now because of that, we're going to be attaching other things to the body, arms and heads and stuff. So I'm going to put the body on first so that it has a little bit of a chance to come together, to glue a little bit stronger before I start shoving other pieces onto it. So the body is number 69. I'm gonna look through my sprues for number 69. Having found it, I'm gonna go ahead and clip it out. Now, this guy is gonna go, this is sort of a chest section, and it's gonna go right on top. Boop, 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 right there. Now, one thing to be aware of is because of the way it was attached to the sprue, there's a little, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little nubbin. So I don't want that blocking my torso piece. So I'm just gonna take my little hobby knife, and because it's very sharp, I can just put it against the nubbin and take it away. And now the two pieces fit much more snugly. Snug. So, same as before, put a little glue on there. And give it a couple of seconds of holding. Boom. And we have got a rider body. Now, let's get that 96C. Once again, I'm going to cut it out of the sprue here. Some of these little ones too will fly off after you cut off the last little bit. So it's sometimes important to put your hand around the sprue just to make sure you don't lose it, because some of those little ones, once you lose it, they're going to be a pain. So once again, I'm just going to double check that these things fit on the way they're supposed to. It looks like they do. It's got a piece of horse face, so I'm gonna put the glue there, and then just a little glue where that rein is gonna go so that it also sticks. One thing that can happen too is if you just glue in the big side and you forget about the little side, you've got a little piece hanging off your model, and it's really easy to catch it on something and snap it off, and it's not good. So to the extent that you can make sure all the touching pieces are glued down, that's great. So now the horse has a full face and his rein is attached. Great. So now, some of the older ones will do this often, but we get one big one here where it says to attach a arm and another arm and a head and a hair. But then we'll be done. We just put it on the base. So because the head's gonna have two things on it, there's gonna be a head and then a hair on top of that, I like to start there. So we're gonna start with the head, which is number 93. So sometimes with things like this, you have to look around a while to find the piece. They don't always put them in a good order. Oh, there it is. So I'm gonna find this 93. Again, I'm holding it so that it doesn't pop off. And we're just gonna go boop, and I'll let it drop gently. Now this is pretty small, you probably won't be able to see this on the camera, but he's got like a little back of his head part for the hair, and he's got a little neck part. So we're gonna put a little bit of glue in his neck part here. And then we're gonna fit him. Now, with these riders, they just sort of have little nubs for their arms and for their neck where the head is going to go. So on the one hand, there's no slots where you can just slot it in and you know exactly that it's in the right spot. On the other hand, because of that, you can sort of woogle the arms and the head around to be in the position that you like, which is great. But you also need to worry, or I shouldn't say worry, it's not a big worry. You also need to watch out for putting his head in such a way where he's looking straight up and it's going to look weird when he's on the model. Or where an arm is at a cockeyed angle and you're thinking, oh, you know, that looks weird. It looks like he's running into battle with a broken arm. Now, if you've got a backstory for your guy and that's what you want to do, cool. But just be aware of that. Next, we're going to do his saddle arm. So his saddle arm is number 87. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and click and clack. Now the saddle arm, if you can see it here, let me see if I can hold it up in a way that makes sense for the camera. I don't know if that's going to work, but it's all bent, and the reason is he's supposed to be gripping those reins, you know. So when I put this in, I want to make sure not only that it looks natural on his shoulder, but also that the reins are going up against the horse, so it looks like he's holding the horse reins. If his arm is way out to the side, it's going to look like he's holding magic leather reins that aren't attached to the horse or something. So that's not good. So once you've put it on, you know sort of where you want to get it. You're going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue. I like to put the glue typically on the body rather than in the armhole. I've done it both ways. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. They both work fine. So I'm going to go for the body on this one. And I might even just drop a little bit on the horse reins there so that when both sides of this get attached. Now, once it goes on there, because there's no automatic slot, you might have to just fiddle with it just a little. See, I put him on there, but the arm, as I have it now, is actually a little bit far down his body. So it looks a little weird. So what I'm gonna do is just fiddle with it a little bit more, bring that side up a little bit so it's more onto the shoulder. I take a look, that looks more natural. And then I wanna hold, because of the angle here, I'm gonna hold his elbow out a little bit while I push in so that it looks like he's holding the horse reins. Double check him again, and he's good. And just like that. Now, if I wanted to, right, this has only been on here for 30 seconds or less, I can just pull the thing off, right? None of the glue has set yet. So it's very manipulable early on. But once I let this dry, typically I like to let it dry overnight before I prime it or anything else. And it'll be fine. It'll be like one piece of plastic, which is great. All right, now that I've done that, it's time to get his other arm on. I want to do the hair last so that I'm giving his head the most amount of time to become more stable. So the other arm is going to hold his master glaive, his master's cursed scimitar, whatever his master glaive is called. So once again, I've got the thing here. I find it and I just clip. Okay. Same as before. Now this one is going to be sort of out in the open. I could attach it to the horse if I really wanted him to have it against his horse like that, but I think that looks a little weird. I don't like that look. So I'm going to have him out. Now, because the shoulder's the way it is, I'm going to have it out sort of like that so that it's away from the horse but pointing forward. I think that's a good look. But if I wanted to, I could point his arm up more so that it looks like he's raising his arm to battle. You know what? In fact, I think that looks sort of good. I'm probably going to do that. Or you could do it with his arm down. Now, as I look at this, there's a little nubbin on here that I missed with my clippers. So I'm going to take my X-Acto, my safety, my hobby knife, I guess is the generic term, the non-corporate term. I'm going to find the best place to cut. And I'm just going to cut through. I got a good chunk of it. Let me come this way a little. There it goes. You got to be a little ginger sometimes, because one, I don't want to cut through and cut my fingers, and two, there it goes. You know, these are still just plastic little bits. So if you press really hard, even if you're cutting on a little bit, it might be enough to snap the arm. So you just gotta be careful. All right, now that I've got that in, I'm gonna go ahead, put the glue on the shoulder, and then I'm gonna try doing that glaive up high pose that I saw. All right, that actually looks pretty good. So I'm gonna hold this here for 4 or 5 seconds, make sure that it's bonded enough, because one thing that can happen, especially with heavier pieces, it probably won't happen with this piece, but with heavier pieces, you'll put the glue on, it'll look great, you'll set it aside to go on to the next step, and then when you look back, the heavier piece, because of gravity, is actually fallen and it's messed up what you wanted. So it's good to let heavier pieces, or pieces that are sort of out on their own a little bit, only attached by one point, just let them set a little bit extra. So I've got that, and that looks, that actually looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that's gonna turn out. All right, the next piece we have is the hair. So the hair is item 79. Where's my hairs? Here are my hairs. All the hairs are sort of together for all the different units here. So 79, so I'm gonna clip. Okay, with the hair clipped, now the hair can sort of go this way or that way, and only one of them is right. So it's important to dry fit in advance, and if you put it away that doesn't feel right, that's probably the wrong way. Give it the other shot. The other thing you can do is, the instructions typically are pretty good about showing the orientation. So if you look at the orientation here of the hair, you'll see that the little hole is on the top end, right? So as I look at the piece, there's a little hole. I'm gonna try putting it with the top end up, or the whole piece on the top. There we go. All right, now that I've felt how it goes, put a little glue on the back of the head here where the thing's gonna attach, and then we put it in. Okay, it's good on this side, but you want to look at it all over from all the different angles to make sure you didn't create a gap, or that pushing the back of the head like that to put the hair in hasn't, you know, forced his head down. Now it looks like he's navel gazing rather than riding into battle. Okay, this is the guy. He's done. So I'm gonna take his base, and same as before. Now, one thing you can do is you can pre-do the base and, you know, make it all rocks and forests and ferns and stuff on there, and then put the guy on after. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I find that that takes a lot of time, and I'm typically not in. I'll do that some every once in a while for particular models that I really think I want to do something cool with. But for your basic, or at least for my basic troops, I'm not doing that. So I've got the base here. There's 2 points of contact. He's got 2 little feeties. I am going to use a generous amount of glue there on the bottom of each feety. And then I want to place him such that not too much is sticking off. A little bit can stick off because that's sort of dynamic and cool, but I don't want the whole thing at the front of the base or the whole thing at the back of the base, because it's going to look weird, and it probably wouldn't be a big deal on this one, but I've built models before that are so far forward on their base that they actually tip the base over, and it's no good. Okay, after about 5 seconds, that's more than 5, but after about 5 seconds, you've got a good model here. So there he is on his base. He's fully built. Didn't take long at all. Now from here, what I would do is I would let this dry for at least a half an hour to get it to really cure. Then I would probably base it by using just normal Elmer's white glue, the school glue. I've got it here. And you can buy one of these giant bottles for, I forget what this was on Amazon, like $9. It's helped me through a gazillion bases so far. I'm only got this much left, but still I've got that much left. And that was for, like I said, $8 or $9. So this is cheap. But I put all that on there. I get some dirt. I bought the Army Painter's Battlefield rocks when I first started. I don't know that I would do that again. Maybe I would. But you know, you can get rocks from a lot of different places. There's a lot of different sand out there. Model railroad companies make it. That's pretty inexpensive and easy to do. But anyway, I put glue all over. I use an old brush that I only use for glue, because once you use it for glue, it's ruined. It's not a painting brush anymore. And then I dip them in, let it set for 2 or 3 seconds, and then I bring them out, tap, 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 tap to get the excess off. And then sometimes I've got a little pile of chopped up cork. I'll glue a little piece of cork on there to be a rock, and then I'll prime. When I go to prime, I prime everything together so that the glue not only has the Elmer's glue on the bottom and the stuff on top, but then some primer, and then I'll paint it, and then I'll put the hard coat on top of that. I just use a clear matte spray on almost all my miniatures to sort of seal it in. I'll put that on top. So from all the different layers of paint and protection, I haven't had anything ever come apart when it wasn't supposed to. Oh, that's not true. I had one come apart when it wasn't supposed to, but that's because I didn't put enough glue in, and then I left it in the heat before I had painted it, and it wasn't a great situation, but it was fixable. It was easy. So, and with one exception, that method has worked real well. I also like using the Citadel texture paints. I've been experimenting with those. I did all my orcs in the Battlefield mud, so it looks swampy. And then I've started using Dunes. I don't know. One of them I've started using for my soul blights that I'm putting together. I started using other ones for demons. So when they get summoned, they have a sort of a different look to them, like they're from somewhere else, not just the rocks and sand. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, that's all it takes. That's a quick, easy build. Like I said, this isn't the most complicated thing to build in the world, but it's not the easiest thing I've ever built either. It's small, it has a lot of smaller pieces. It has arms and legs and heads that just sort of go on there, and there's no tab A and slot B that interconnect. You just put them where they go. And then you get to rotate them into the exact poses that you like. But as you can see, it's not a difficult build. It's not something that's going to take forever. It's not something you have to really worry about getting wrong, because you've got plenty of opportunity to fix it later. And if you're at all hesitant about the building side of miniature wargaming, hopefully this has reassured you that it's nothing to be concerned about. And trust me, the way I did models in my youth, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. Well, thank you so much for watching. This has been Battle Ready.